from Scottish and Southern Electricity Networks. I'm also joined here today by my colleague, Saskya Huggins. Saskya is a social impact director at Low Carbon Hub, and Saskya will tell you a bit more about the Low Carbon Hub a little bit later. We're going to be talking to you about Project Local Energy Oxfordshire, or LEO as we call it. Hopefully the video you just watched has given you a bit of an introduction into what Project LEO is all about. Could you go to the next slide, please, Hans?
Yes, okay.
Thank you. So I'll be telling you about flexibility market trials that we're running in Oxfordshire and the benefits we hope these will bring to the trial participants. And Saskya will talk to you about some of the exciting community-centred trials we're running in locations in Oxfordshire as well. We'll then finish off talking a bit about some of the barriers that we can see to participants in Project LEO actually getting these benefits, particularly in terms of SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, and also for communities and people. Hopefully then, as Hans said, we'll have plenty of time at the end for questions as well. Now, you may have noticed from our job titles that neither Saskya or I are network engineers or technicians. We're not technical people. But if you've got questions at the end that are a bit more technical, then we're more than happy to take those away with us. And we can get back to you with responses to those, hopefully when Hans shares that recording with you as well. The next slide, please, Hans. Okay, and we'll go one again. We've seen that one, so next one, please. There we go, that's the one. So we think that one of the great strengths of Project LEO is the very unique collaboration of organisations that make up the project. And you can see those represented on the left-hand side there on that slide. You can see everyone's logos there. This is including organisations from academia, from universities, from commercial companies, local government councils, and also the Low Carbon Hub. So that's a very unique arrangement, a very unique collaboration of organisations, all of whom have different areas of knowledge, different interests, which we're combining together in Project LEO. So I work for Scottish and Southern Electricity Networks. We are the distributed network operator. SSEN looks after most of Oxfordshire, delivering electricity from the transmission network, so the very big generation, where it reaches towns and cities. We then take over, so we go from the transmission network and then deliver that energy, that electricity, into homes and businesses. So we're not a supplier of electricity, so people don't pay our bills to us. We are network operators. And all these organisations that are all working together to help plan and deliver the energy trials in Oxfordshire. And Oxfordshire, you can see there on the map, is a large county which is in the south of England. Funding for LEO comes from those different partners whose logos are up there on the screen. But we also get funding from the UK Research and Innovation Industrial Strategy Fund. That's the UKRI. And that's from their Prospering from the Energy Revolution initiative. So we've got funding both from the partners and also from the UKRI. We go to the next slide, please. Thank you very much. Okay. This is the what, the how and the why of Project LEO. And we like to think that Project LEO is one of the most ambitious zero carbon focused energy projects that's taking place in the UK today. Nobody's challenged us on that one yet. We're a demonstrator project. So we're actually out there on the ground in our network areas, running real trials rather than just being a more theoretical research project as some similar projects have been. So these are real trials that we're running. And we know in Project Leo that if we're going to reach the UK's net zero targets, and also the anticipated increased demand for electricity, we need to be doing something different in how we manage our networks. And our trials are taking a much more local look at the potential that energy flexibility can have in a smart local energy system. And that's a system that has the ability, the capability of meeting the changes in demand that we're expecting for electricity. So this smart local energy system is going to be based around energy flexibility. And we'll explain a bit more about what we mean by that a little bit later on. Next slide, please, Hans. Marvellous, thank you. So the project is largely focused on these three different areas that you can see here on the slide. So the first area that we're looking at is technical. So the tech, the platforms and the IT, but also the assets, the things that are actually providing energy. And we've got a bit of a list there, a couple of things. So things like batteries, storage batteries, building management systems that look after things like heating and lighting, but also looking at the different IT platforms and innovative systems that we're actually needing to make the most of what we're calling energy flexibility. The next focus area we have is around markets. So we're actually looking at energy flexibility markets where people can trade energy flexibility. We're having to look how we can design these in ways that make these markets easy to access, attractive both for someone who might be buying and selling energy flexibility. And this is attractive not just in a commercial sense, in monetary sense, but also what other benefits people trading energy flexibility might be able to get from doing this. We also need to understand in these markets, where might there be conflicts that need to be resolved? Because SSEN and the other distributed network operators around the UK aren't the only organisations who are looking for this flexibility. So there may be more than one person after somebody's flexibility. So how do we decide who's going to actually benefit from receiving that flexibility? And both these two tech and market areas I've just talked about are also working very closely together with another different project, which is called Transition. This is a SSEN-led project, which is very much looking at all these different platforms and systems and the IT side of energy flexibility. So they're working very closely together. Again, a very unique collaboration between two actually separately funded projects to come together to actually make the most of these trials. And together, these two different projects, I think, are more than the sum of their parts. So they're complementing each other. And then lastly, but by no means least, we're looking at the people and the communities who are at the very heart of and are the users of this energy system. Because if these things, this tech and these markets don't work for people, then they don't work, because people are sitting at the heart of our energy system. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our flexibility market trials. Go to the next slide, please. So who is it that can take part in our market trials? So our market trials are really there to support the trading of flexibility services. So what do we mean by that? So to provide a flexibility service, you need to be able to make temporary changes to the way that you either consume, generate, or store electricity when you're asked to by the network operator. So this is a temporary change, and this temporary change is there to support the local energy network. So the change is there requested by the network operator because they've looked at their various systems and identified that they need energy flexibility. So to participate, you need to be able to make this temporary change in response to a request by the network operator to either what you're consuming, generating, or storing. Some of the other requirements for taking part in our market trials is you have to be a business or a company. So we're not able to have domestic customers, so homeowners or home renters as well. So you can't take part in the trials unless you're actually a company or an organisation. We have, however, got a number of what are termed of aggregators. These are third parties who bring together a lot of domestic customers that can all provide some flexibility, so who can all increase or decrease generation or demand. They bring them together in a pool and act as that third party. So we have got some of those aggregators who are bringing in domestic or household assets into the trials that way too. So any business in our trial areas, so we've got 6 different trial areas in Oxfordshire. They're focused on what we call our bulk supply point areas. So that's an area of the network. So you need to be in one of the different trial areas. Originally, we did actually ask that you needed to be able to provide a minimum of 50 kilowatts of flexibility to be able to participate. But after feedback from some of the people who are interested in participating, we removed that cap, because we realized that for some people, they just weren't sure whether they had 50 kilowatts or 20 kilowatts or 80 kilowatts. So this sort of uncertainty, really, because this is an area of innovation, led to us removing that cap. So anyone can take part, no matter how much, so they need to be the business, obviously, as I mentioned, but no matter how much flexibility, so how much change they can make, they can still take part. They also need to have signed our flexibility services agreement. So this is our standard contract for selling a flexibility service. So selling your ability to turn up or turn down your generation or demand. And this is very much based, so our flexibility services agreement is very much based on an industry standard agreement. Although, again, in response to some feedback we've had, which is, the beauty of having an innovation project that you can make changes to along the way, we have actually improved that contractual requirement and improved the FSA to make it more readable and more accessible for people. So those are all the requirements for taking part. So there are a few more when you get into, the more in-depth requirements, things like you need to be able to have the right insurance, your company needs to be suitably insured, all those other areas. But generally, that's really the only requirements for taking part. Have the next slide, please. So I've been referring to flexibility services. So again, these are all about turning up your generation or turning down your generation or your demand for short periods. We're looking for businesses who can offer the network operator one or more of these different sorts of flexibility services. And the service that we require, so which one of those four there, the service we require depends on what the network needs at that particular time to keep it well balanced, to make sure everyone's lights stay on, everyone's Wi-Fi works, and that we don't overload our network infrastructure. So these are all about services that are there to make sure that your local network is being kept in good balance and also meeting demands and aren't overloaded by generation, for example. So just to run through those 4 different sorts of services that can be provided. So we've got sustained peak management there. That one's looking for somebody to increase their demand to decrease their demand temporarily, or if they've got a generation asset like solar panels or wind turbines, then we're going to ask them to increase their generation. So it's demand down, generation up. They would get 12 hours notice request to do that. And you can see there, we've got a payment for £600. So these different values that you can see on the right here are what we call price ceilings. So they're the maximum that SSEN, as a distributed network operator, would be paying somebody for providing this service. And there are different reasons why these different payments vary. You can see that the highest amount we would offer is for this dynamic DSO constraint management service. That's because we would require this service if we actually have an outage. So if all the lights went out and we had to restore power to people, we'd be looking for this dynamic DSO constraint management service. Very short notice. So we want this for within 30 minutes. Obviously, we want to get those lights back on as soon as we can. We're penalised, SSEN, for any unplanned outages like this. So it's advantageous to us to get people offering this service. So we're happy to pay more for it. The second service here, Sustained Export Peak Management, is actually the only service where we're going out and asking businesses, can you actually turn your demand up? Or if you're a generator, can you actually turn your generation down? So this is the only service that requires this. And you might wonder in what circumstances we might need that. Well, imagine, quite rare in the UK, unfortunately, but it's a beautifully sunny Sunday afternoon. Everybody's out in the garden. They're barbecuing, they're picnicking. They've not got the heating on. They're not watching the TV. They've not got their ovens on, producing that classic UK roast beef dinner. They're out enjoying the sunshine. They haven't got their heating on. But at the same time, we've probably got a lot of generation going on. So anyone with solar panels, and possibly if it's windy, wind turbines. So we've got a lot of generation going on, but possibly not so much in demand. And that means we can actually have an overloading in that network area of generation. So we need to get someone who can turn that generation down, or actually people who are happy to increase their demand, because it's all about keeping that in balance. And the third service there that I haven't mentioned, this is really a service that we require when we know we're going to potentially have what we call an outage. We're going to have to turn the electricity off. It's something that can actually help us to keep that electricity running just by reducing the demand on that network area. So it's what we call a pre-fault, because we're there to repair something. We can see that there's a potential issue on the horizon. So we use this service to try and keep those lights on and keep everyone with the electricity that they require. So as I said, the network that the flexibility service that we're requesting all depends on what we're seeing as being the state of the local network. You go to the next slide, please. Thank you very much. So all those services I just told you about, they are there, as I say, to help support the local network and to keep it balanced and make sure that there's always enough energy there to meet demand and not too much generation going in. The other side of what we're actually testing in these market trials are what we call peer-to-peer services. A peer is a bit like a neighbour. So we're also offering the chance for these two peers or two neighbours on the network to trade any spare connection capacities that they have. These capacities are basically, see it as an allowance that's set by the network operator, which tell you what the maximum is you can import, so take out the grid, or sorry, that you can import from the grid or export to it in the case of generation. So it will tell you when you get your connection, this is how much, if you're a generator, you can put into the grid, or if you're actually just demanding electricity, this is how much you can take out of the grid at any time. So that's your connection agreement for your capacity. So if you're someone who's not using all of your allowance, your capacity, for example, to generate, to export, or to import and actually take demand from the grid, you can sell this spare capacity temporarily to your network neighbour. When I say network neighbour, what I mean is that somebody who's connected around the same point on the network, at the same bulk supply point or at the same primary substation point. because what you're doing is in effect or balancing or cancelling each other out in this trade. So you need to be connected at the same point. This is something that's, I think, particularly attractive to what I call seasonally variable generators or weather-dependent generators. So, for example, the picture there at the top might be, so if you have a solar farm or a solar park, and imagine that actually it's a very, very sunny day, and you might want to be able to put more into the network of what you're generating than your connection capacity allows. You want to go above what your network operator has said you can be putting back into the grid. But it's a not very windy day. And in fact, you've got a neighbour, a network neighbour, who has got wind turbines. They're not using anywhere near their full capacity. So what they can do is agree to you that they will sell just temporarily, perhaps until they think the wind's going to start blowing again, just temporarily sell that spare capacity to their solar farm neighbour. So this then enables, of course, that solar farm owner to increase renewable generation into the grid, which of course is excellent for everybody. We all want to see that increase of renewable generation. Similarly, at the bottom, you may well have, I often imagine perhaps a factory that's had lots and lots of orders. They want to open the factory 7 days a week and not just 5, but their connection, their capacity, their connection agreement says they can't take that much from the grid. But if they can find somebody who is not using all of their connection allowance, then that person can temporarily sell them that ability to go above that allowance. If you go to the next slide, please. The difference with those peer-to-peer trades, really, I showed you the ceiling prices that we would pay for the 4 different services that support the network. The difference is with those peer-to-peer trades is it's actually just those 2 peers who set the cost of that. So it's up to them to decide, up to the seller, how much they want to ask for the service they're going to provide, and up to the buyer as to how valuable that is to them and how much they're happy to pay for it. As the DNO or the network operator, our only role in that really is to actually say, yes, that's okay from a network point of view, or no, we're not happy with that. We don't think the network will benefit from that. So we would give an agreement to those 2 traders, but it's them that actually sets that figure as to what they'll pay. So we're very lucky. We have a number of different businesses that we're talking to at the moment about taking part in these trials. We're actually just starting to invite external participants into the trials. So far, it's only those partners, if you remember the logos we looked at, it's only those partners with assets who are part of the LEO project who have been taking part in the trials and selling their flexibility services. We're now opening that up to external participants, talking to a lot of them in the trials, and we are hoping that we're going to see a number of different benefits for everyone taking part in these market trials. And some of these benefits we've listed here. So it's an opportunity for them to influence the development of these emerging flexibility markets. They're able to test their ability to provide flexibility in a very safe space. This is trials and innovation. So we can be flexible with a little f. We can be flexible as to how they take part. So, for example, if somebody was uncertain about how much flexibility they might be able to produce, then this is a safe space to have that learning. The markets can also take because it's innovation, they can take a more asset or participant focused view when we're planning the different markets and planning what flexibility services we're going to ask for. And again, that's because it's innovation. So those sort of 3 orange circles are really the benefits of taking part in our specific trials. These other benefits that I'm going to talk about now are more generally about some of the benefits that taking part in flexibility trading itself might offer. So a clear benefit there is the fact that there's a revenue opportunity. So you can actually earn money from selling your flexibility services. Next slide, please. And some of the other benefits that we've had reported to us that we hope that will be realised through the participation in these market trials is that people are understanding, organisations and businesses are understanding how to deliver more with the energy assets that they've got. That might be delivering more flexibility. It might be how to best spread their flexibility across different markets. So they're learning just to do more with what they've got. It's also strengthening the case for investment in the ability of an asset to deliver flexibility, or also helping to support any business cases around actually putting in new renewable generation, because there are opportunities there, markets there available to actually commercially benefit from that. And the organisations are getting a deeper learning, a deeper understanding about their assets and how they behave and interact. The Low Carbon Hub, for example, has put more monitoring onto some of their energy assets. And this is helping them actually have a real good view of where they might be getting faults on those assets that they didn't have before. We're also, of course, all taking part in these trials because they're also supporting the UK's journey to a zero carbon energy system. And it's actually surprising to us, maybe it shouldn't have been, that when we talk to potential participants in the markets, that actually one of their main reasons for taking part isn't actually the money. It's the fact that this is actually supporting our journey to that net zero energy system. So people are gaining a much better insight into how they can provide flexibility, what they can do with their assets to maximise their ability to produce flexibility as well. Okay, can we go on to the next slide, please? Thank you very much. And just now, it's my great pleasure to hand you over to Saskya Huggins of the Low Carbon Hub, and Saskia to talk to you about some of the community-centred trials Project Leo is carrying out. Saskia.
Thank you, Charlotte. I'm Saskya Huggins. I'm the Social Impact Director at Low Carbon Hub, and we are an energy business based in Oxfordshire, which is run for the benefit of the community. As Charlotte mentioned, we've been taking part in the market trials using our own portfolio of renewable energy installations. The installations that we own includes more than 40 rooftop solar arrays. We also have just completed the construction of Ray Valley Solar, which is the largest community-owned ground mount solar park in the UK, and a hydro scheme on the River Thames. And through these trials, we've been learning a huge amount about the way that flexibility markets operate, what we need to do to get our energy assets and our organisation flex ready, and the costs that's associated with that and the benefits that we might get. So next slide, please. Want to talk a little bit about integration. We've been learning through the market trials how to integrate our energy generation installations into a flexible energy system. We're also running a series of trials, our Smart and Fair Neighbourhood trials, to understand the role that individual households and communities can also play. Much of the work of Project Leo, as you'll remember from Charlotte, has said is focused on technology and data integration, giving much better visibility and control and coordination of energy assets at the grid edge. But the energy system is much more than those wires and switches. It's also made up of the people that interact with it. And we're interested in how we integrate people into that system too. If I could have the next slide, please. So in the Smart and Fair Neighbourhood trials, we're starting with the smallest unit, a single household or a business. Now, each one of those is connected to the electricity grid via an electricity meter, and each one of those meters has its unique number, which in the UK is known as a meter point administration number, or an MPAN. Apologies for the jargon. Our starting point is to ask, how much is it possible to balance energy use behind the meter within a single house before it even hits the grid? So our first consideration is energy efficiency. What can be done to the fabric of the building so that the people living in it can meet their energy needs using as little energy as possible? After all, the greenest and the cheapest unit of electricity is the one that you don't actually use. Next, we're looking at bolt-on technologies, kits such as solar PV and batteries that can help you produce and store your own electricity. And finally, we're looking at the potential to add electric vehicle charging or heat pumps to the property. And through this combination of improved efficiency, storage and generation on site, and then adding to that EVs or maybe heat pumps, we want to see how much of a home's energy needs, including those for transport and heating, can be met even before it connects to the electricity network. So next slide, please. Next, we want to explore how these individual units, each home and each business, can start to share and coordinate the energy generation, the energy demand, and the storage potential that they all have, and also their share of local network capacity. How, if they pool all of those together and start to coordinate together, how might they be able to work as a coherent unit? Did want to stress we're not advocating self-sufficiency. Rather, it's this coordinated interdependency that aims to make the most efficient use of the power available at any one moment in time and the overall capacity of local networks. This in turn then frees up more space on the existing network, so you can add more electric vehicles, heat pumps and solar PV. And with each new item that you're adding, you're also adding a bank of energy assets that can also contribute to balancing the local system. So the hypothesis that we're working to is that by improving coordination and collaboration between people at the grid edge, that's where people connect to the electricity network, together we can create greater added value than could be achieved individually. And that value might be financial, social, or environmental. So our working title for this concept is the Community of MPANs, named after that unique meter number that is the single connection point that we all have to the electricity network. We think this name is rubbish, I should hasten to add, and we're looking for a better name and we'd love to hear your suggestions, but that's our current working title. We've started with no assumptions about the commercial structure that the Community of MPANs might take, on the basis that this really basic model still has to be demonstrated technically, as well as prove to be socially desirable to the people that it involves before we start to consider how it might work commercially. So we think it'd be really hard to move to a fully commercial model, such as a local energy service company or a full microgrid, if we've not worked out how each household, business and local generator can get involved first in a safe, simple and fair way. Next slide, please. So the Smart and Fair Neighbourhood trials are enabling us to take this concept, the Community of MPAN concept, into the real world. And we're working in real places with real people to try out different bits of the model. I'm just going to give you a very brief flavour of a number of the trials, but you can read more about them all on the Project Leo website. So here, top left, we've got the village of Deddington, where we're running a heat flex trial, and it's looking at how the installation of heat pumps alongside smart monitoring and control systems to help them deliver flexibility from those heat pumps can help that community decarbonise in a very rural part of Oxfordshire. In Springfield Meadows, we're helping optimise use of large solar PV arrays on a number of domestic rooftops all in the same area, and learning how a group of households can generate as much electricity locally as possible without the need for costly network reinforcements. If we move to Oseney Supercharge, Oseney Island is right in the heart of Oxford, and a group of households and businesses have signed up with Project Leo to install solar PV and batteries so that they can generate and store their own electricity. They've then agreed to share their real-time energy data with us so we can learn how the generation and storage on their sites is helping reduce demand on the local distribution network. This project is also helping us learn about the realities of installing and then living with large bits of kit in quite small urban houses. For example, batteries often have a very small hum associated with the inverter in them, which when you're in a very small property can actually be an issue. So working with the manufacturer of those to understand how you can live with some of this kit in your properties. Of course, not everyone owns their own home or can afford to install their own technology. So in Rose Hill, which is another community in Oxford, we're running a solar saver trial. We're working with tenants in an apartment block to explore how a time of use tariff can help them benefit from solar PVs that their landlord has installed on the roof of their apartment. And finally, in the community venture, we're working out how you can bring all of that together to produce a local area energy plan. So helping that community to work with their local authority to put a route map in place, identifying what needs to happen in their particular area to support the transition to a zero carbon energy system and have a say in its local governance. And helping people become active participants in the development and governance of the energy system is really important to us. We want communities to understand the opportunities that the transition to a zero carbon energy system could create for them, and also to have a voice when there are some really key choices to be made about who benefits and who pays. So move to the next slide, please. Ultimately, we want to create an energy system that's fair. And fairness isn't just about everyone having equal access. It's about having a system that's equitable, one that's designed to meet everyone's varying needs. And we're not just advocating fairness simply because it's the right thing to do. We believe it's a really key ingredient if we're going to achieve the mass participation that's going to be needed to unlock the full potential of flexibility for the energy system. Next slide, please. So through Project Leo, we've learned about a number of factors we think are important in really maximising that participation. So as well as being fair, we think offerings need to be understandable and jargon free. As Charlotte said, neither of us are technical people, and as I've learned more and more about the energy world, it does seem to me that it's very heavy on technical terms. And amongst the general population, there tends to be quite a low level of understanding about how our energy system works. We're used to having electricity available at the flick of a switch without even having to think about what happens within the system to make that possible. So even the concept that when we use electricity can be as important as how that electricity is generated is a new one for many people. As well as being understandable, it's got to be relatable. Most people have no idea what flexibility is. So if we can produce case studies and examples and some appropriate imagery to help bring it to life and help people identify when an opportunity may be relevant to them. And because people and their energy needs are very different, we don't all live in detached houses with off-road parking and a roof suitable for solar panels, for example, which is often the image you see used within the energy industry to denote a typical household. When we are designing flexibility services, we need to create a really big range of different opportunities that take into account different people's needs and their motivations and capabilities to get involved. The call to action, what it is that we want people to do, needs to be really clear and simple. And automation can really help here, reducing how much time it takes to participate and our reliance on people remembering to take part when we need a repeated action to happen. Moving on to the next row, accessibility, by which I mean access to finance, access to your own energy data, access to support and training to help you understand the opportunities and make the most of any technology that might be installed. Trust is also a really key issue, especially when you're promoting a brand new service and where there may be fears about sharing data and giving up control. We find that the idea of a local convener can really help in developing that trust. And that's been a role that the Low Carbon Hub has often stepped into, working alongside other local community groups. Supportive policies and business practices make a huge difference too. The opportunities that are created by flexibility need to be supported by rather than hindered by business's usual processes or the policies and regulation that govern the energy system. In the UK, for example, it's currently not possible to trade electricity locally without a really expensive license. So that's stopping immediately the opportunity for communities to sell their own electricity that they generate. And finally, it's got to be worth the effort. The benefits of participation has got to outweigh the cost of participation. Next slide, please. And I just want to finish by running through some of the benefits we are finding people value through the trials. Some are financial. For example, it may be possible to generate income from selling your flexibility. The challenge is that this may be very small when you go down to an individual household level, but perhaps by pooling your income with others in your community, that could become more rewarding, that collective sum of money that you might be able to generate. And perhaps you would want to raise that for a local school rather than for yourself. Financial savings may also take the form of benefits might also take the form of savings through avoided costs. If you're spending less money on energy thanks to improved energy efficiency, or by taking advantage of cheaper power at times of high generation. As with the low carbon hubs experience in the market trials, flexibility services can mean technology upgrades. So participants might benefit from better heating systems, improved controls, and also access to new services such as their own generation and storage. And more efficient use of the network in your locality means that there's going to be more space for those of us who want to be able to start plugging in electric cars and our heat pumps and our solar panels without having to wait for disruptive and costly upgrades to the local networks. And a lot of our trials are really focused on that community level, coming together and trying to create opportunities that tackle wider community issues. The OSNI trial I mentioned, its starting point wasn't local energy balancing. The local community actually wanted to understand how the trial might help more people have access to electric vehicles in an area where there's very little off-street parking, and it can be hard to find a parking space at all, let alone one outside your own house to charge your car. And finally, as Charlotte mentioned, supporting the UK's journey to a zero carbon energy system is proving really motivating. We're constantly being asked as a community energy organisation, what can I do to help tackle the climate crisis? And flexibility services are creating a wide range of different ways that people could get involved, supporting that transition to a zero carbon energy system and playing their part in helping tackle this global issue. And talking of opportunities, I'm going to hand you back to Charlotte to tell you about an opportunity we wanted to let you know about.
Next slide, that's the one. Thanks, Hans. Thank you very much, Saskia, that was great. So it's obviously really important to us in Project Leo that we're making sure we're sharing the things that we're learning through forums like this. We're reporting our learnings also through the UK's Open Networks project, but we're also taking Leo more global. We're reaching out internationally. So just about to be launched is the International Community for Local Smart Grids, the ICLSG. We know that actually there are countries all over the world who are looking at energy flexibility and looking at how to, bring smart into local energy. So it's an opportunity to bring these different organisations together to share their learning. And it's led by the University of Oxford and the ENEL Foundation. And they're all really very focused on enabling that local net zero solution by sharing that learning between them. And we're very much looking for new network operators and community partners who might be interested in being part of the ICLSG. On the slide there, you can see the link to the website. And we'll make sure this is available through our the slides and the recordings that we'll send through. So if you are a network operator or you are a community partner, perhaps someone like the Low Carbon Hub in a different area of the world, then we would be really interested in having membership from those sorts of organisations. Okay, and that ends our presentation. So over to you, Hans, and hopefully we've got enough time. I can see we've got some time there for some questions.